Good morning and welcome today to our today's session. Hello everyone and welcome today to our today's session. I'm Rachel Rongo, your session producer, and Martin Manjohi will be our moderator, our session moderator. If you can hear me, can you type a yes? If no, can you type a no? Thank you, thank you. Kindly type from where you're joining us from, which country you're joining us from. Thank you. Let us know from which country you are listening us from. Thank you, Nairobi, Nairobi. Botswana, welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Nairobi. A little bit about our housekeeping rules is we requesting all we request that all of you who are joining us today will be on mute and their video should be off. You can raise your hand or you can chat in your question in our chat today. Yes. Our today panelists, we have a guest who's by the name Senyo M. Adben, is a labor consultant. Is a labor consultant and mediator and an executive director, the Institute of Directors. He is a labor consultant and a mediator, arbitrator listed with National Labor Commission. He is trained non-executive directors and members of the Institute of Directors in Ghana. Areas of specialization is in employment relations, in mergers, acquisition, workplace investigation, and employment law. Senyo has 17 years work experience. Senyo studied mineral processing and metallurgical engineering from KNUST and conflict, peace, and security studies at master's level. Senyo holds a postgraduate qualification also in business admin and international relations. Senyo is an author. She is an author of the book Career Toolkit for Successful Job Hunting and several articles on HR disputes. Dispute resolution and corporate governance, interest in fitness, aerobics, cooking, and traveling. Senyo is also a message therapist and premarital counselor. He is currently country HR manager of WBHO, a multinational and civil mining construction firm. He's also a certified senior human resource SPHR. Welcome to our today's session, Senyo.
Thank you. Thank you.
Over to you, Martin.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Just a quick test my voice. If you can hear me, kindly type a yes. Just to hear before we start our session if you can hear me on chat, just type a yes. Perfect. Thank you very much. Welcome to all our friends from across the continent, Nigeria, and it's a pleasure for us, Senyo, to have someone from Ghana. Since we started in August, in April, we've been having your friends next door, but we've not had the pleasure to have a panelist from Ghana. We thank you very much for your time. Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome very much. So before we start off, we'd like to launch a small poll just to get a feeling of everything in the house. So kindly take this poll with us. And these are yes or no, what nearly matches what you applies to you. So question number one is, I am a HR, I'm in HR, yes or no? Just to know how many people we have in HR who are not in HR. So a yes or no. The second question is, my academic background is a degree or master's in HR, a degree master's social sciences, that's the psychology, sociology, the arts, then a degree in master's in sciences, medicine, biology, physics, those areas, a degree or master's in engineering, degree or master's in education, then we have degree or master's in administrative and management functions. So let's just take that poll. Then the third question is, my organization knows for certain what productivity is expected from each role. We have done the analysis and have data to support our conclusion. So yes or no, or what are you guys talking about? Then the fourth is, our goal setting is done based on scientific methodology. Yes or no, or there's also the option of there is no scientific way to set goals. Okay, so I'd like to encourage you to take the poll. So far we have about 14 people who have 17 who have taken the poll. And we'd like to welcome the 43 HR professionals who joined us this morning. We thank you for your time and also your commitment to learn with us. Okay, so we will close in 15 seconds. I'd like to encourage you to take a little bit, to take the poll. Okay, 5 more people, at least we hit 30, 50%, a little bit more over 50%. Okay, so if you're taking the poll, now is the time to take. I'm closing in about 10 seconds. Okay, 5 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll, and we're going to see what the poll says. So, Senyo, I'd like to welcome you to just help us understand this, yeah?
Come again?
I'm saying,
Martin?
I'm sharing the poll results. As you can see, okay, yes, we have about 77% of the people who are from HR, which is nice.
Yes.
Interesting to know where the 23% are from, yeah? So we'll assume not HR. As we look at this question, there is a theory that people from the engineering, mechanical area make better HR. What do you think?
Well, because of the way HRM is evolving, with the requirement to use data for decision making and people management, then it becomes a bit easier for people who have engineering and science backgrounds, who are trained to use numbers and theoretical deductions to make decisions, to be able to apply these tools much more better than those from the social science background. But I do not think that really these tools cannot be learned. I think it just comes a bit more easier to people with engineering and science backgrounds to be able to apply, data and also make deductions based on data as such. So yeah, I agree with the theory, but those who do not have engineering or science backgrounds do not have to worry, because these tools are easily learned. And once a person has a knack for numbers, that can be easily picked up, and then HR can become more interesting and exciting.
Okay. Just to clear to the audience, our guest today is a gentleman in Ghana, and we are pleased to have him on this session. Now, back to this poll that we're having. Question number 3, we have a large percentage that knows that they've done an analysis, they've engaged to know the productivity expectations. The interesting is the 7% who ask, what are we talking about? Yeah, can productivity be measured?
Certainly, yes. Productivity can be measured, and it's basically relates to an input-output relationship regarding resources and everything. And resources here also include time. So the effort, the time, and all other physical resources like finances and material and even people can be measured. And once it is measured scientifically, it's able to indicate how engaged people are, how efficient people are, and how effective people are. Yes, so productivity can be measured. Indeed, it is one of the very old approaches, of determining efficiency in various aspects of production. So yes, productivity can be measured.
Okay, so interesting. The no and the what are we talking about make 50%. Yeah. Okay, so then about question number 3 was my organization knows for certain. Question number 4 was our goal setting is done based on scientific methodology, and where we have yes is 20%, 57. This is interesting. 57% is based on not based on any science. Actually, about 84% do not use any science when doing goal setting. What's your opinion here? Yes.
Yes, it's this data actually agrees with the general conclusion that a lot of organizations are not applying scientific methodology in determining, productive areas of work. So it is just assumed that people are employed, they are paid, and they show up at work and they complete their work. As to how well and how effectively they are doing their work, hardly is it measured, and hardly is it tailor-made and structured in a way to get the maximum out of people. So you find that we have, the phenomenon of presenteeism, where employees are present at work, but would normally use their time to do a lot of other things other than their core jobs and activities that they are supposed to undertake in order to meet their goals. So again, this poll shows that most organizations don't clearly define specific goals for specific jobs. You can have a job description that would have what people must do, but it hardly has, an area where they spell out the outcomes expected from the job and how the measurable factors that job is supposed to have. And so once this is not done, it's difficult to measure the work of the person. And then at the end of the day, we cannot tell how productive or to what extent the person has been productive on the job. We cannot indicate how efficient that person is, which is a factor of how fast work is done well. And we cannot also know whether the person is very effective at the job. Let me give you this example. There's a joke that says that when people go to church and you ask them after the church service what the sermon was, they'll tell you the sermon was very good. You say, so what did the pastor say? The sermon was extremely very, very good. And they keep saying very, very good without telling you specifics. And that is how we find a lot of workplaces these days. So You can ask somebody, what do you do at work? What exactly do you do? How is your work measured? How do you know that you are being effective? They may not be able to use any structured approach to explain to you the level of their individual efficiency or effectiveness. And I think that by the time we are done with this session and discussions, we should be able to answer some of these questions. How productive am I? How effective am I? How efficient are my skills on the job, and etc., etc. Yeah.
Okay.
Martin.
Thank you very much. Before we get into the deep part of it, there's this video we'd like to take a look. It's a 12-minute video. If we can be with us.
I have spent the last years trying to resolve two enigmas. Why is productivity so disappointing in all the companies where I work for? I have worked with more than 500 companies. Despite all the technological advances, computers, IT, communications, telecommunications, the internet. Enigma number two, why is there so little engagement at work? Why do people feel so miserable, even actively disengaged? Disengaging their colleagues, acting against the interest of their company. Despite all the affiliation events, the celebration, the people initiatives, the leadership development programs to train managers on how to better motivate their teams. At the beginning, I thought there was a chicken and egg issue. Because people are less engaged, they are less productive. Or vice versa, because they are less productive, we put more pressure and they are less engaged. But as we are doing our analysis, we realized that there was a common root cause to these two issues that relates, in fact, to the basic pillars of management. The way we organize is based on two pillars. The hard, structure, process, systems, the soft, feelings, sentiments, interpersonal relationships, traits, personality. And whenever a company reorganize, restructure, re-engineer, go through a cultural transformation program, it uses these two pillars. Now, we try to refine them, we try to combine them. The real issue is, and this is the answer to the two enigmas, these pillars are obsolete. Everything you read in business books is based either on one or the other or their combination. They are obsolete. What does it work? How do they work when you try to use these approaches in front of the new complexity of business? The hard approach basically is that you start from strategy, requirements, structure, process, system, KPI, scorecards, committees, headquarters, hubs, clusters, you name it. I forgot all the metrics, incentive, committees, middle offices, and interfaces. What happens? Basically, on the left, you have more complexity, the new complexity of business. We need quality, cost, reliability, speed, and every time there is a new requirement, we use the same approach. We create dedicated structure, process, systems, basically to deal with the new complexity of business. The hard approach creates just complicatedness in the organization. Let's take an example. An automotive company, the engineering division is a 5-dimensional matrix. If you open any cell of the matrix, you find another 20-dimensional matrix. You have Mr. Noise, Mr. Petrol Consumption, Mr. Anti-corrosion Properties. For any new requirement, you have a dedicated function in charge of aligning engineers against the new requirement. What happens when the new requirement emerges? Some years ago, a new requirement appeared on the marketplace, the length of the warranty period. So therefore, the new requirement is repairability, making cars easy to repair. Otherwise, when you bring the car to the garage to fix the light, if you have to remove the engine to access the lights, the car will have to stay 1 week in the garage instead of 2 hours, and the warranty budget will explode. So what was the solution using the hard approach? If repairability is a new requirement, the solution is to create a new function, Mr. Repairability. And Mr. Repairability creates the repairability process with the repairability scorecard, with repairability metrics, and eventually repairability incentive that came on top of 25 other KPIs. What percentage of these people is variable compensation? 20% at most, divided by 26 KPIs, reparability makes a difference of 0.8%. What difference did it make in their actions, their choices? To simplify, 0. But what a cost for zero impact, Mr. Reparability, process, scorecard, evaluation, coordination with the 25 other coordinators to have 0 impact. Now, in front of the new complexity of business, the only solution is not drawing boxes with reporting lines. It is basically the interplay, how the parts work together, the connections, the interactions, the synapses. It is not the skeleton of boxes, it is the nervous system of adaptiveness and intelligence. You know, you could call it cooperation, basically. Whenever people cooperate, they use less resources. In everything. You know, the reparability issue is a cooperation problem. When you design cars, please take into account the needs of those who will repair the cars in the after-sales garages. When we don't cooperate, we need more time, more equipment, more systems, more teams. We need, you know, when procurement, supply chain, manufacturing don't cooperate, we need more inventories, more working capital. Who will pay for that? Shareholders? No, they will refuse. So who is left? The employee, who have to compensate through their super individual efforts for the lack of cooperation, stress, burnout, they are overwhelmed, accidents. No wonder they disengage. How do the hard and the soft foster cooperation? Well, the hard. In banks, when there is a problem between the back office and the front office, they don't cooperate. What is the solution? They create a middle office. What happens 1 year later? Instead of one problem between the back and the front, now I have 2 problems. Between the back and the middle, and between the middle and the front. Plus I have to pay for the middle office. The hard approach is unable to foster cooperation. It can only add new boxes, new bones in the skeleton. The soft approach, to make people cooperate, we need to make them like each other. Improve interpersonal feelings. The more people like each other, the more they will cooperate. It is wrong. It is even counterproductive. Look, at home I have 2 TVs. Why? Precisely not to have to cooperate with my wife. Not to have to impose trade-offs. Why? And why I try not to impose trade-offs to my wife? Precisely because I love my wife. If I didn't love my wife, 1 TV will be enough. You will watch my favorite football game. If you're not happy, here is the book or the door. The more we like each other, the more we avoid the real cooperation, we strain our relationships by imposing tough trade-offs, and we go for a second TV or we escalate the decision above for arbitration. Definitely, these approaches are obsolete. To deal with complexity, to enhance the nervous system, we have created what we call the smart simplicity approach based on simple rules. Simple rule number 1. Understand what others do. What is their real work? We need to go beyond the boxes, the job descriptions, beyond the surface of the container to the real content. Designer, if I wire, I know that it will mean that you will have to remove the engine to access the lights. Second, you need to reinforce integrators. Integrators are not middle offices. They are managers, existing managers that you reinforce so that they have power and interest to make others cooperate. How can you reinforce your managers as integrators? By removing layers. When there are too many layers, people are too far from the action. Therefore, they need KPIs, metrics, they need poor proxies for reality. They don't understand reality, and they add the complicatedness of matrix KPIs. By removing rules, the bigger we are, more we need integrators. The less rules we must have to give discretionary power to managers. We do the opposite. The bigger we are, the more rules we create, and we end up with the Encyclopedia Britannica rules. You need to increase the amount of power to empower everybody to use their judgment. their intelligence. You must give more cards to people so that they have the critical mass of cards to take the risk to cooperate, to move out of insulation. Otherwise, they will withdraw, they will disengage. These rules, they come from game theory and organizational sociology. You can increase the shadow of the future, create feedback loops that expose people to the consequences of their actions. This is what the automotive company did when they saw that Mr. Reparability had no impact. They said to the design engineer, now, in 3 years, when new car on the market, you will move to the after-sales network and become in charge of the warranty budget. And if the warranty budget explodes, it will explode in your head. Much more powerful than 0.8% variable compensation. You need also to increase reciprocity by removing the buffers that make us self-sufficient. When you remove these buffers, you hold me by the nose, I hold you by the ear. We will cooperate. Remove the second TV. There are many second TVs at work. They don't create value, they just provide dysfunctional self-sufficiency. You need to reward those who cooperate and blame those who don't cooperate. The CEO of the Lego Group, Jürgen Wittgenstein, has a great way to use it. He says, it's not for failure, it is for failing to help or ask for help. It changes everything. Suddenly it becomes in my interest to be transparent on my real weaknesses, my real forecast, because I know I will not be blamed if I fail, but if I fail to help or ask for help. When you do this, it has a lot of implications on organizational design. You stop drawing boxes, dotted line, full line, look at the interplay. It has a lot of implications on financial policies that we use, on human resource management policies. When you do that, you can manage complexity, the new complexity of business, without getting complicated. You create more value with lower cost. You simultaneously improve performance and satisfaction at work because you have removed the common root cause that hinders both, complicatedness. This is your battle, business leaders. The real battle is not against competitors. This is rubbish, very abstract. When do we meet competitors to fight them? The real battle is against ourselves, against our bureaucracy, our complicatedness. Only you can fight, can be. Thank you.
Okay. Semyon, you're there with us? Yeah, hello?
I'm here.
Okay, great. So just to, we have learned a little bit about the productivity and how it plays along with the others. Okay, so how exactly do we measure productivity?
So basically, I have mentioned that productivity is measured, or is an interplay between, or is a relationship between input and output activities, and measured as a percentage. So to measure productivity, you first look at all your input resources. Input resources into an activity could be time, money, machinery, automation, and all of those activities that you put into something to get work done. Then the output resources are the outcomes. And these are often the products and services you want. And these products and services are measured in terms of quality.
Okay, so let's say I wanted to find the productivity of a bank teller in a bank, right? Yes, the people said,
so quality then is the extent to which we are close to our outcomes. If you can you hear me?
yes, I can.
Am I back?
You just lost your, yes, you're back.
Okay, great. So I was saying that if you are able to get your input activities and resources, and then you are able to identify the specific outcomes you want in terms of quality, then the ratio and the extent to which you are able to extract your output from your inputs as a measure of percentage will then give an indication of how productive a person is. So for me, normally, I just try to look at two basic factors of production, or two factors of productivity. That is efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency is then or describes the extent to which something is done well. And effectively, okay, let me come again. Efficiency is the extent to which something is done in terms of time, right? Very quickly, how fast something is done well, and then effectively how well it is done within that time. So if you are able to come out with your specific outcomes, or your specific outputs, or exactly what your product or service should look like, then you can measure its efficiency as to how fast did it take all the inputs to give us this output. That would be a measure of efficiency. Then, in terms of quality and value, how well did the product actually turn out? In asking these questions, there are variables and simulations, automated simulations that you can put these parameters in to be able to measure your productivity levels for you. As in the video, you realize that the new way of looking at things is probably moving away from the structural, hard approaches to things, where you are looking closely at the specifics of structure, what he calls boxes and circles, and move towards the softer approaches to answer questions: who exactly is using these principles or approaches? If you go to the who, then you can maximize the level of productivity and engagement by focusing on soft factors, which relate to people, teamwork, level of engagement, and KPIs, and so on and so forth, And just to add that, even though the video did not mention issues on culture, I would like to say that most of what he was talking about would be very possible if we take care of culture within the organization. And the organizational culture becomes very important in how people live and work within that organization. And having described that culture and identified exactly how people are supposed to work and behave in the organization, then we can focus on the soft aspects of what exactly they are doing, how they are doing it, and for how long they are doing it to get the desired outcomes that we want. And again, measuring quality, the desired outcome that we want, to what extent are we getting it? And what are the percentage errors in the things we do? And once you start asking questions like this, immediately you can start looking at the weaknesses of the system you run, and also be able to know how much cost you are running, so that once you identify these together with the cost, you can easily begin to reduce costs as well, to make your system more and more effective and efficient. Yeah.
Japan, so I'm just thinking here, and maybe you can help us expound. So when people set their performance goals or performance targets, so I say I will achieve 80% of what I set out to do. I'll achieve 1, 2, 3 things. Are we setting our performance goals or wrongly if we do not know what actually, how productful a role is supposed to be? And here we are looking at productivity in the sense of the human element.
Yes. So you see that generally we set performance goals and we say that the goals are supposed to be SMART. But there are elements of performance which measurement becomes extremely difficult if you want to use the human element. For example, measuring the time that it takes for a person to undertake a particular activity, a repeated activity over and over and over again. Measuring that becomes difficult. So most of that then in measuring of that performance indicator would be more subjective than objective. So our human elements in measuring specifically becomes challenged in performance management if we fail to use automation and automated processes, scientific processes of doing it. So I'll give you an example. We have a job that is supposed to pack items into boxes in an assembly line. So the job is just to pack the items in the boxes, and we say that the person should pack, say, 20 boxes in an hour as his set target. But we realize that he's always meeting his targets, and even when we review the targets, he continues to we review the targets upwards, he continues to meet the target. Someone may be happy, a supervisor may be very happy that, oh, the guy is really good, he knows how to do his work. But a scientific approach will tell you that if the guy is always meeting his target, then there must be something wrong. Why? You then have to go in his work, how he positions himself, how he coordinates his hands, how he picks the items from the running belt, how he stitches them in the box, how he arranges them in the box such that he's able to beat the time. Once you measure all of these activities one by one and put time on it, you come to a total time that he's able to do it. Now, if you decide to now make it better in terms of how he actually does those activities individually, you find that he may even be able to pack maybe 100 boxes in that 1 hour. And this is the scientific approach we're talking about. That until you break down, and this is what the video also talks about, that until you go behind the generalities and go into the specifics of what people are doing and how they are doing it, definitely you will be missing the point. So in this case, we look at that scientific way of doing things, and that gives us the result. Lastly, to answer your question, you find that we talk about interplay. So in talking about people, first of all, KPIs, when you develop activities based on which you have your performance management principles, approaches, each of those activities have to have a key performance indicator, a measurable factor. And those factors must be more scientific than just objective. Okay, so objectivity can be decided by human beings, but when a machine measures, it is more, so we are looking at using videos, using timing machines, using observations by human resources job analysts, and so on and so forth, to determine the specific productivity levels that can be reached in each employee activity, so that when we are rewarding, we know exactly what we are rewarding, and we are not determining performance measurements on the basis of what we are seeing alone or what we are feeling, but rather what is truly measured. Yeah.
Okay, so what you've just described, you have what we is called work motion study.
Yes. So
Okay.
it's good. It's good you have introduced the terminology work motion study. Basically, it is a scientific approach of measuring productivity, and that is just what I have described. That you break down all the various activities, time them, make them more efficient and effective. When you put it back together, you get a more desired outcome than if you had just looked at the hard aspects of what goes into productivity.
So I'm just thinking, the example we shared was involving physical work, but at a managerial level, where we have to think, where we have to conceptualize, where we have to decide, how can we develop the productivity standards that we are expecting using work motion?
Great. So the managerial productivity basically has three general arms: decision making, time, and use of time, and problem solving. Okay, so if you look at the general work of managers and you break it down this way, then if you take the use of time for the period of time that the manager is supposed to be engaged at work, you take his specific activities, meetings, what happens in those meetings, how are those meetings structured, are those meetings, what exactly are discussed in those meetings, how are deliverables met in those meetings, and how long do those meetings take? You break it down like that. Could the meetings be made shorter? Okay, what are the ingredients that would still meet the requirement of the meeting if it is 30 minutes shorter, or if it is 15 minutes shorter, etc., etc. If you take the issue of problem solving, you break down the activities of problem solving. How does the manager solve problems when it comes, as soon as the problems hit his desk? How does he go about it? What specific steps does he take? And all of those steps, are there ways that you can loop those steps to the point where it becomes mechanical or automated, to the point where the manager knows exactly how to go around the issues in the fastest possible time? Then if you look at the issue of how the manager spends his time, on the job, how much time does he use solving problems? How much time does he use meeting people? How much time does he use having lunch? How much time does he use actually sitting down and communicating? How much of communication does he do? All these are, broken down activities in the work and expectations of the manager, such that you can then look at the time element, the quality of outcomes of whatever the manager is supposed to do, and use that to measure how productive that manager is being. Now, if you go into it and you find that the manager has, say, 15 meetings in a week about a particular problem that doesn't get solved in that time interval, that 1 week time interval, then you find that there's something wrong. Even though at the end of the day, work will go on, people will produce, and his team will come out with, meeting their targets of production, you find that work motion study would tell you that the manager is actually incompetent and is ineffective because is spending a lot more time on perhaps the mundane things and not the actuals that we're supposed to be looking at. And that system can be optimized by, say, 150% or 200%, etc., etc. So this concept is extremely exciting for me because it focuses on the softer side of things and puts people in the middle of production, and also enhances the determination of key indicators and how work is actually supervised and processed in the workplace.
Okay, so, thank you very much. Quick question to the audience. So can we, in a situation where we have managers who are stuck in daily meetings, always busy for meetings, is it possible to have managers who are stuck in meetings and are not productive? So yes in chat, Y for yes, and N for no. So scenario is we have managers stuck in meetings all week, very busy. Can we find at the end of the week that they're not very productive? They're not productive, depending again on the use of time and the problem solving and date. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a question on what are key from Liz. The question was, could you share some HR metrics that we could use to measure employee productivity?
Can you come again?
Could you share some HR metrics that we could use to measure employee productivity?
Well, HR metrics. So it depends on the industry. So for example, if you take the hotel sector, if you take the hotel sector, for example, the HR metrics to look there would be, for example, employee attendance. Okay, so how fast or how consistent does somebody turn up for work, and so on and so forth. In customer service, we can look at an HR metric like total employees served per day, or total lanes per day, and so on and so forth. It's a bit general to ask the question the way it's been asked, but as I've said, each job would need to have a KPI, and those KPIs would determine how those jobs are measured. So in a typical production environment where we are looking, or a sales environment, we are looking at the volumes of sales vis-a-vis the cost of sales. So generally, for you to know, for example, an HR metric will measure the cost per salesperson, and also the revenue per salesperson, etc., etc. So the HR metric will be determined by the specific KPIs that you set. But for HR metrics, we have hundreds of them. And depending on the ones that are applicable to the various sectors, you can pick and choose exactly what you need to do.
Okay. So thank you very much. So it's not that there are factors that cut across, it depends on your industry and the sector again.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me just pick your mind on this one. Are we likely to see productivity going up or going down based on the current global situation around COVID?
That's a very interesting question. Research on productivity, workplace productivity, I have come across so far, a number of them indicate that actually during lockdown and the working from home approaches that a lot of the flex work approaches that organizations rolled out during the implementation of COVID protocols during lockdown and all that showed that workers were more productive working from home than the office. And one of the major findings of that was the level of engagement increased when the workers were working from home in a very lax environment, and here the soft issues become a weakness again, that the levels of interaction and interplay between people when they are at work takes some of the time away, and the concentration and engagement reduces. So outcome of COVID protocols in people flexi working shows that they are more productive when they work from home than when they work from the office. Again, you find that for many urban centers, people normally spend between 2 to 4 hours commuting and returning from work. And working from home, those hours are also put into the productivity factor. And so more time and more engagement leads to more productivity. And so that basically is what is generally perceived, that people working, flexi working and working from home during COVID were more productive than when they were working from their offices as a group.
Perfect. So a quick question to the audience. So since COVID-19, around March or April, if you've been working from home, do you feel you've been working more than when you are at office? So with the why, yes, no, you're not working as much as before. Why you're working more, and you're not working much different from working at the office. Okay, so it's a general trend that people that working from home are working more than when they were working from offices.
Yeah.
Okay, so something around that you mentioned and a question that was asked. Productivity, I think from what I'm getting, is affected by the environment, right? So how would you handle productivity in a government organization, again, that is aligned to politics?
Now, that is a big challenge, because the outcomes of the government sector, the KPIs are normally not quality oriented, but are tied to political advantage. So if a project is being run, it is being run because it has been promised in a manifesto and it has to be delivered. So whether it is delivered half-baked, half-done, not too well done, but well-polished, it is good enough. So quality becomes a challenge. Efficiency, however, is high, because once the politicians set to do something, they try to do it very quickly. And that often affects the quality of the outcome of the product or the service. Now, so government services also do not have any competition. So once there's no competition, the driving factors are not effectiveness or quality or competitive advantage per se, but it is about political clouds, political expediency, and so on and so forth. So measuring productivity in government institutions is extremely difficult. However, it does not mean it cannot be measured. If we set out to set the key parameters of performance and the quality of that performance and the effectiveness of the delivery of each of the activities that government agencies have to provide, and also the people working in those government agencies, the role they are supposed to play regarding their specific job descriptions, then we can measure productivity there. Except there doesn't seem to be any pull factors or push factors that drive the need to measure productivity in those areas. But some countries have started running their public services like that. I know the situation of Rwanda, where public services are now being run almost like private agencies, and with specific productivity outcomes and specific targets for those heads of those institutions, and approaches and then the interventions are deployed to assist those institutions to re-engineer, to ensure that they are more effective in the delivery of the government service they are required to deliver. And so, for example, for the issuing of passports, I know, for example, that in Rwanda, it was dropped from somewhere 2 weeks or a month to a few days or under a week, so on and so forth. So that can be done, except the political will to make sure that these things are done sometimes are not very available in our parts of the world. And so we end up lacking those things. But yes, these principles cut across public and private sectors of a country.
Okay, a quick question to the audience, which will bring us to our next point. If you're in this session and the organization you work for has been in existence for between 15 years plus, kindly type a yes, a Y for yes. The organization has been in existence plus 15 years. The organization where you work with has been in existence for 15 years. Y for no, Y for yes, N for no. And then my question becomes, is there a problem measuring productivity in legacy organizations? Senyom, Mr. Senyom.
Legacy organization. Yes, because the corporate culture in legacy organizations becomes somewhat mechanistic. And because normally in legacy organizations, power is normally centered, at the top, with workers and inclusiveness very, very reduced or non-existent. I would say, yes, to a large extent, it is difficult to measure productivity under those circumstances. But here again, I will come to corporate culture. Legacy organizations that have a weak culture would find it difficult, going into things like productivity measurements. And also, of course, it's determined by the environment they are in, the sector, the business environment they are in would also determine if you have a legacy organization competing against other multinationals and or young companies that are using innovation and technology, they are forced to change their culture and approach to how they do business. So yes, the legacy organizations, by virtue of the fact that they're very mechanistic, it becomes, they are set in their ways. We've done it and it's worked all the time. So this is what we know. The culture of change in the legacy organization becomes a limitation to its adopting things like serious detailed productivity management. But then again, it can be done if the culture of the organization changes.
Okay, thank you very much. So as we wind up, there's some few questions we're seeing that have not been answered. We could email them to you and then we can provide a response and we can share with the audience in our email for the recording of this session. Okay, so we will share the questions and you can respond. At least it's still 9 o'clock your time. It's still early morning your time. So we'd like to thank you very much. And from the audience, if you have any question, kindly email them to me, Martin at iPerformance Africa. We'll be sharing that email. Just a quick question, information. We have our sessions for July lined up here. However, small error, the learning and development, making the most of your learning budget in crisis time will be tomorrow, and the HR technology will be on the 29th. We have the same timings, and Samir, we'd like to thank you very much. A quick question to the audience. We'd like your response on this, your rating on this session. On a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, kindly rate this session. Kindly give us your rating, then also email us any question that you have. Okay, thank you very much. Kindly try as much as to rate us. We'd like to get feedback so that we know which areas to improve as we move on. So we'd like to thank everyone who has attended this session. We thank the new countries we are having, and we'd like to thank you. We have a few things we've planned up for you, which we'll be sharing in this coming week and this coming month. And we are glad that you joined us. Sharing an email with this session recording and the question to the answers for questions we were unable to respond to in the interest of time. So, Mr. Semeo, last word to the audience.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share these interesting thoughts on you on productivity. I am just very interested in having each and every one of us, benefiting from this conversation, to look into ourselves and apply these principles to our own careers and our own activities as a person. It would enhance professionalism. It will make us extremely effective, and it will make us very stable, on the job market. So in as much as we're looking at organizations, my final word is to say that let's also apply these principles to ourselves as professions, and it will make us cutting edge professionals in the industry and would be able to push us to the next level of our careers. Thank you so much, Martin, for the time.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. We would like to thank the 72 HR professionals from right across the country who joined us for this session. We would like to welcome you to join us in tomorrow's session on learning and development, making the most of your learning budget in crisis time. We know that the learning budget is a fast cut in any times of crisis. So we'd like to thank you and join us tomorrow. Thank you very much, and everyone, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.